Good afternoon, everybody. There is another consultation in play at the moment to bring in another further aspect of Agenda 2030. First of all, in London and over the whole of Greater London, one assumes. So this is a consultation that is being run by the London Assembly Transport Committee, and it's entitled The Future of Smart Road User Charging. February 2023. The closing date for the consultation is the 10th of March, so there's only a couple of weeks left from when I'm making this video to respond to this call for evidence. Now, I've seen a few things around about this on Telegram and on other social media channels. So it is a terrible, tyrannical idea. It's not new. I've known about it because I was on the London Assembly for 5 years, and people were starting to talk about this, 4 or 5 years ago. I opposed it wherever it was brought up and said, no, this is going to be an absolute attack on our civil liberties, because what it would entail is every vehicle that it drives into London in any sense whatsoever, whether they start their journey in London or whether they start their journey somewhere else and go to London, or whether it's just people who live in London and travelling around, would have to have some kind of satellite receivable box in their car that would emit a radio frequency ID signal that would then track your car all the time, and then you would be charged directly from your bank account for driving according to however many miles you drive, what time of day you drive, what type of road you drive on. They would all have different charges, but you would be monitored completely every second of the day, or your vehicle would, so that you could be charged for every single yard, meter, kilometre, mile, whatever you travel. So completely tyrannical, total big brother surveillance. That's the idea. Now we know with sort of 5G being set up, that wasn't really on anyone's radar too much 4 or 5 years ago when the idea was first being mooted. But now we know, we see all of these 5G towers going up everywhere. That has the technology and the ability to be able to monitor all vehicles everywhere if they have an RFID transmitter inside the cars. New cars, newly manufactured cars, have this facility. They can be remotely programmed by the manufacturer, remotely turned off in some cases if your cars have a kill switch, and a lot of the new ones do. I drive a car from the last millennium, so it doesn't have this complex electronic technology that allows it to be switched off. If I wanted to go to London with road pricing, I'd have to get some kind of box in my car that could be monitored by satellites or by 5G so that I could be charged from my bank account. But London is just the first place that this is being mentioned. They do have road pricing systems already in some places. There is a rudimentary one in Singapore, and when I was actually on the London Assembly Transport Committee for 5 years, and they did have a few discussions about this back then. And one of the things that came up was, they have this system in Singapore where they have gantries. They have about 40 or so different gantries at different points around the city-state of Singapore, and whenever you drive through one of these gantries, you get charged. So there's not smart road pricing per se. It's just, there's different places, different locations where you get charged for going through. This is kind of what they're proposing in Oxford, but it's harsher in Oxford because Oxford, of course, is much smaller than Singapore. So it's going to be, they're actually totally zoning the city off. Well, I suppose in Singapore it's kind of like that. In a way, you drive through one of these gates and you get charged, and all the vehicles have a kind of box in their car that can be detected when they go through one of these 40 or so gates. What this is proposing here from the London Assembly Transport Committee is something on a completely other level. It's not just a few gates, you know, like the ULEZ, the congestion zone, they have cameras on the edges of the zone. I mean, the original congestion charge, which went up about the year 2000 or so, very early on, 2003, I don't know, something back in the day, over 20 years ago, they have something like 110 cameras around the congestion charge zone, and they're just automatic number plate recognition cameras. They detect you and register your car registration vehicle if you go in or out of the zone, but they don't generally detect you inside the zone. They're just on the edge. Now, the ULEZ expansion to the north and south circular roads that Sadiq Khan brought in back in, I think, 2020 or 2019, something like that, that has the same. There's many more cameras around a bigger circumference. So if you drive in or out of the zone, you get registered, and then you get charged by the computer. You have to actually go and pay, and if you don't pay, the computer sends you a fine. So that's how it works, but it doesn't generally look at you when you're actually in the zone. So some places it does, but not everywhere. So they're kind of like, the ULEZ zone around the north and south circular roads. I mean, it must have, 400, 500 cameras around in different places, and you cross any one of those points, you get charged. That's how it goes, and that's apparently the technology. This is completely different. So this is tracking you every single place you go, and obviously mobile phones already have the ability to track you. If you carry your mobile phone around you and your tracking's on, smartphone anyway, if you carry a smartphone, it's very easy for any app that has the capability that you don't sort of disable the personal location tracking can track you, by the meter, and know where you were at whatever time of the day they want to find out where you are. So the technology already exists and it's already in use for most people. You might have seen that film 2000 Mules about the American election. There they used tracking data from mobile phone apps to work out where people had been who had been involved in the election. I won't say anything more about that. That's a completely different issue. But in terms of tracking, the technology is there. So the technology is there for tracking vehicles. This is what they want to bring in. They want to bring in this kind of system. Now, the only mitigating point about this is that the London Assembly doesn't have any actual power to legislate or do something. So this is a call for evidence by the London Assembly. I was on the London Assembly, I was on the London Assembly Transport Committee. They ask a lot of questions. They have people before them every month on a panel. They can ask questions. They have a formal meeting in the City Hall. It all looks kind of very important, but actually at the end of the call for evidence, at the end of the panel meeting, the end of whatever report they put out, it doesn't have any power really. It's just they will make a report, and then the report can, half of the reports they make just go and sit in a cabinet. It does go to the mayor, and the mayor can look at the reports and he can either say, yeah, great, or no, thank you, I'm not going to do anything about it. With something like this, it's completely in line with what the mayor, Sadiq Khan, wants to do, because they are all totally signed up to this idea that there is a climate emergency. This is the same thing that comes from the World Economic Forum and all those other groups, the C4 Cities Network, the UK 100 Councils Network that has just been set up, that people are becoming aware of to implement net zero policies and so on. So this is all about climate alarmism. It's all about net zero, cutting cars, cutting, as they say, cutting congestion. And, as I said when I was on the London Assembly, London has had an increase in population of 2 million over the last 20 years. You simply cannot have a massive increase in population and narrow the road spaces, taking away half the space that used to be used for cars and lorries, and then give them over to bicycles, and cut congestion at the same time. You simply cannot do all three things at the same time. Even a child's 5-year-old child can tell you that by the rudimentary process of logic that they would have in a 5-year-old brain. But such a 5-year-old child seems to be infinitely more intelligent and able to come up with a logical, rational conclusion than do the members of the London Assembly and the Mayor of London. But that's just where we are in the early 21st century, unfortunately. But there we go. So if you want to cut congestion, you cannot have a massive increase in population and decrease the road sizes as well, and put in road blockages all over the place with these so-called low traffic neighbourhoods, which are actually being proven now with 2 or 3 years of evidence to lead to an increase in congestion and an increase in nitrogen dioxide levels and an increase in carbon particulate levels wherever they are put in. But despite this evidence, they carry on with their Agenda 2030 plans, which are a complete load of barking mad nonsense. But there we go. That is just the government in London. I did try to stand to be the Mayor of London. I wasn't successful in 2021, unfortunately. You know, they had electronic counting with Smartmatic counting machines, you know, make of that what you will. But I would write to this, you know, I wouldn't take it too seriously because it's the London Assembly. As I said, it doesn't have any real power, but it will, whatever is given here in this so-called call for evidence, will cross the desk of the Mayor of London. And if he decides to use it, if it bolts up his case for trying to implement smart road pricing, then he will use it as evidence to try to promote his case for implementing that if he decides to do so. Hopefully he will be voted out at the next London elections, which are in May 2023. So we'll see what happens then. Hopefully this will just never ever be implemented. But this is the first place. I haven't heard of it being pushed anywhere else yet in such a form. You know it's part of the agenda, and you know that, you know, whatever is made public, this is now being made public in one form with a consultation. But you know there's going to be a load of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 committees and so on, and the, wanting to implement this. And the people that Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum says he has used to penetrate the cabinets of governments around the world. And, to some extent that's obviously national governments, but it's local governments as well. Obviously the Greater London Authority is the largest local government authority in the UK. It is essentially a local government authority, just controls the area where 10 million people live. But other local governments around the country will be wanting to do these kind of things as well. So it's worth responding to the consultation anyway, particularly if you live in London, to say we don't want this. It's just another tyrannical scheme which will completely invade your privacy. It's not right ever for the state to be able to track your every movement in your vehicle, so then it can directly take money out of your bank account for the miles you've driven on the public highway, which belong to all of us. And that really is the long and the short of it. So please do give me a thumbs up for this video if you like it, and do subscribe to my channel as well. And please do join us in the Heritage Party at heritageparty.org. Even consider standing to be a candidate yourself in the local elections this year, 2023. So I misspoke earlier. I said the London elections are May 2023. They weren't. The London elections are May 2024. Sorry. But the local elections this year around many local councils and districts and unitary authorities in England will be on the 4th of May 2023. And there's also local elections in Northern Ireland as well. We'll be standing candidates all over England and Northern Ireland. So please do consider standing as a candidate yourself to get into positions of power and to stop these things from being implemented on a local level. So do join me in heritageparty.org. We are the only UK political party that specifically opposes Agenda 2030 and climate alarmism in our manifesto, which you can read on our website as well. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope that's been informative, and God bless you all.